Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. I think we're in day 5, is that right? Middle of day 5? Thank you for being here. You'll see that today we have most of Treasury Board with us. Treasury Board met this morning and made a decision to approve a preliminary $1 billion to fund the disaster recovery program for Southern Alberta and Fort McMurray. We use 3 words when we talk about what's going on in Alberta right now. We talk about responding, we talk about renewal, and we talk about rebuilding. We are now in the renewal phase, the recovery phase, where people, just like those people down the hill, are getting back to their homes. They're seeing what the damage is, and they're getting ready to deal with how to rebuild their families, their lives, and their communities. And I promise you that on behalf of the Government of Alberta, that we will do everything that it takes to ensure that people can rebuild their homes and rebuild their lives and rebuild their communities. Now, I know that very often at this point in time, you're going to say, how much will this cost? The answer is, we don't yet know. We're starting to see speculation from people as to what this will mean, and we're certainly going to do that work. I think, is Andre here?
Yep.
Can you come here for a minute, please? You're very important today. I want to introduce you to a very important man. His name is Andre Corbeau. He was an Assistant Deputy Minister in Transportation, and he will be leading the integrated task force for the Government of Alberta in responding to this crisis. The reason we can have confidence as Albertans in the work that he does is that because his last assignment before this was as a Brigadier General in Afghanistan, as Deputy Commander of the 10th Mountain Division, commanding 20,000 U.S. troops and dealing with situations that were probably more difficult than this. Not to say that this isn't a difficult situation. We are coming together as a province, as a community, as families, as neighbors to rebuild. And I will tell you that I can't think of anyone who I trust more to support Doug Griffiths and Fred Horn in the work that needs to be done than this man, and I thank you very much for doing it, and we are very, very grateful that you have taken this on. You know, I don't want to scare people, but I want you to know that when we talk about what's going to happen, we're talking about a 10-year plan, and we're committed to make sure that we take that time to do it right. But I also want to talk about a couple of other things, and I have a couple of notes, I'm sorry. I want to talk about the fact that we're going to make sure within the next 48 hours that people who are still evacuated have access to funds. They will have cash cards available to them in order to ensure that in these very difficult situations, some people probably leaving without access to their bank accounts will have cash that's going to ensure that they can get through just in the short term. The other thing that's always been the experience in Alberta with respect to flood relief is that previous programs have talked about the fact that people needed to wait a fairly significant amount of time before they received funds to begin rebuilding. We're not doing that this time. Part of the work that our integrated task force will do is realign our priorities so that people who have moved back to their homes and are beginning to face decisions will have funds in their hands in very short order. And when I say that, I mean within 10 days to 2 weeks. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and I know there are many stories. When I saw her yesterday, she was cleaning out her basement, still had 8 feet of water in it, and the water table was so high that she couldn't pump any more out. She texted me today and she told me she's ripping out the main floor of her house. So we don't know what comes next. We know there are many people who still haven't got back to their homes. And as I said, we will do what it takes to ensure that people can rebuild their lives. I'll be going back to Canmore today to see the impacts since Saturday, and I'll be going with Minister Horn, who will take a look at the hospital, and with Kyle Fawcett, who is our Associate Minister for Rebuilding and Recovery for Southwest Alberta. Robin Campbell and Ken Hughes will be visiting Siksika today. And I know that Rick Fraser will be in High River within 12 hours. We are committed to doing everything we can to make sure that people rebuild their lives. This is going to be a tough week, but we're going to get through it. We're going to stay committed, and we're going to make sure that in the long term we do everything that we need to ensure that families and communities can feel safe and that we will rebuild and honor our past and our future. Thank you.
I'm not sure who would be the best one of the recommendations that came in the 2005 plan, which of those recommendations has been implemented, if any?
Do you want to speak to that?
Sure.
Doug will speak to that.
The report was done in 2005 by George Groeneveld. We released it last year to make it public, and in our initial analysis, pretty much all of the recommendations had some work done. When you read the report, though, very few of the recommendations have a completion date or a completion target. It's a continuous work in progress to do flood mapping and to do mitigation, so we've made progress in all of the recommendations in the last year since we released the report.
A little bit about, and maybe Minister Horner can talk about this as well, about where this money is going to come from and how it's
I'll speak to that.
And how it's going to affect the budget.
Yeah, well, it is going to affect the budget, and I'll say right now, because someone's going to ask the question, are we sticking to plan to balance the budget? No, we're not. The $1 billion that's available now is part of what has been our good, solid fiscal planning. It's in the contingency account, and the reason it's there is because of the decisions that we made earlier this year to access financial markets with respect to infrastructure. So we have that cash available now, and as we move forward and we continue to look at what we're going to need into the future, that's going to have to become part of what will be an ongoing and I think probably an amended approach to budgeting in Alberta. Do you want to add to that?
No, Premier, got it.
All right.
Now, when all is said and done, how much will local municipalities be on the hook for repairing their own, city and town and village owned infrastructure? Or do you think once you contribute and once the federal government contributes, that will cover the costs for their replacement of bridges, pathways, etc.?
Well, we expect that what we're going to be able to do through this disaster recovery plan and the negotiation that we have with the federal government to be able to cover most of it. Not all of it will be covered. For example, some of the cash we've talked about that'll be available in the next couple of days won't be covered through the federal funding. But our commitment is to make sure that we're rebuilding that infrastructure, that we're in some cases probably improving that infrastructure. So we're not looking right now to a situation where we would parse responsibility to municipalities. This is a provincial disaster recovery plan, and our commitment is to fund recovery right across the province in every municipality and in every home that's been affected.
Can you speak to the board decision to go ahead? I think the infrastructure in the city would be able to shape.
Well, I won't speak to that. We've been in touch on a daily basis with the Stampede. It really is for the Stampede to decide what they want to do. I mean, they're an incredible organization. They know what they're capable of, and I know that there have been lots of discussion going on with our officials and with city officials to ensure that that's in place. I think it's good news in terms of community spirit and support that we do what we do best in Alberta, which is rally. I'm looking forward to the event. I don't know exactly what that will look like, but I have a lot of confidence that the people that do understand what it takes to move ahead, being sensitive to the fact that there are still displaced people that we want to make sure can stay in their hotel rooms right now, is all part of what we need to deal with. But it is good news that it's moving ahead, and I have a lot of confidence in the board of the Stampede to have made the right decision.
Premier, when you talk about money being reimbursed by the federal government, they can reimburse up to 90% of this. So when we're looking at, say, this initial outlay of $1 billion, could ultimately, are we looking at the full amount of this or the 90% of that amount being reimbursed, or how do you see that?
No, the federal funding formula doesn't cover everything, but that's not going to define what we do to support families and communities and infrastructure.
The cash cards you're giving to the evacuees, how is that going to work? How do you apply it?
Well, what I want people to know now is that by, I think, the end of the day, those rules will be clearly set out and that information will be available. I'm going to take an opportunity to augment that answer a little bit. I was talking, again, to friends today. There's a lot of emails flying around with a lot of misinformation, a lot of discussion about how people need to apply for insurance and then be turned down before they're going to be able to access provincial funding. That is not the case. That is misinformation. There's information out there that there are some parts of communities that will not be covered because their properties are located on floodplains. That is misinformation. There's going to be a lot of that happens in the next couple of days, and I really would like to ask people to go to the official government websites to get information and to be in touch whenever they need to be with my office and with the hotline information that's available through Alberta Emergency Management. We are going to do, please listen to my words, whatever it takes to get everyone back to a place where they can continue to live their lives. So let's know that there's going to be a lot of people that have opinions and ideas and are giving advice, but please go to the government websites to make sure that the information that you have is actually true.
What was the feeling like at the Treasury Board meeting, given the fact that you're allocating as a first phase $1 billion, and it could be more money if necessary?
Well,
What's the feeling like among yourself and your...
Well, I would say, and Rick, you and I haven't had a chance to see each other face to face and talk like this. The world changed on Thursday. The world changed on Thursday morning, and I think that as a Treasury Board, we've come to terms with that. We think Albertans have come to terms with that. This is like nothing we've ever faced before, and we're going to respond to the challenge. I would say that it was a very somber meeting, but it wasn't a somber meeting because we were deciding to spend $1 billion. It was a somber meeting because we had to decide to spend $1 billion. This was a tragedy that is facing 100,000 people anyway, thousands of people, thousands of families, 26 communities, and that's why it was a somber meeting. But we'll deal with it.
In terms of borrowing for infrastructure, you said, will we see a significant, will that borrowing limit increase significantly? And
Pardon?
are you reallocating sort of your decisions about where capital funding will go? Like, are you talking about that yet?
Well, this is day 5. There's no doubt that as we move forward that there are going to be decisions that need to be made. But you know, the assumption of your question is that the decisions with respect to infrastructure funding will still fit within existing envelopes, you know, $5 billion a year. We're not in a place where we can even begin to talk about that yet. The world changed on Thursday. We're responding, quite frankly, on a day-by-day basis right now. As we have more time, we'll be able to lay out, and Andre will be working on a long-term plan. That'll be something, of course, that we'll share with Albertans. And as we move forward, we'll figure out together how we're going to get through this. Thank you very much. All right.
Great.
Okay. Excellent. Okay.